I, 28F, stood there in my wedding dress, a gown that had taken 6 months to find. It was perfect. Everything was supposed to be perfect. The lights in the reception hall were warm, casting a golden glow on the faces of our friends and family. My new husband, Mark, stood beside me, his hand resting on the small of my back. I felt a sense of calm settle over me, a feeling that this was it. This was the beginning of my forever. My maid of honor, Jenna, my best friend since we were 5 years old, raised her glass of champagne. Her smile was wide, almost too wide. She tapped her glass with a fork, the gentle ringing sound silencing the happy chatter in the room. All eyes turned to her. She looked beautiful in her pale blue dress, the one we had picked out together. I smiled at her, ready to hear the sweet, funny speech we had joked about for years. I expected stories about our childhood, our sleepovers, the time we tried to bake a cake and nearly burned down her parents' kitchen. I expected her to talk about how she knew Mark was the one for me from the day I met him. She cleared her throat, her eyes sparkling under the chandeliers. "I want to make a toast," she began, her voice clear and steady. The room was filled with anticipation. I squeezed Mark's hand, feeling a surge of love for everyone in that room, especially for the two people standing right beside me. Jenna looked from me to Mark, her smile never faltering. She took a deep breath, and then she said the words that would shatter my entire world. "To my best friend," she said, raising her glass to me. I beamed, my heart swelling. Then she turned her gaze to Mark, a look passing between them that I didn't understand. Her voice dropped a little, becoming almost intimate. "And to my future husband." The words hung in the air. For a split second, there was just confusion. People blinked, their smiles frozen on their faces. Did she misspeak? Was it a joke? A very, very strange joke? But then the meaning landed. The whole room went deathly silent. You could have heard a pin drop. The cheerful music that had been playing softly in the background seemed to fade away into nothing. Every single guest was staring at Jenna, then at Mark, then at me. My own smile dissolved. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hand, still holding Mark's, went cold. I looked at him, searching his face for an explanation. His eyes were wide with what looked like panic. He was staring at Jenna, his mouth slightly open. He looked horrified. But was it the horror of a man whose wedding was just ruined by a drunken, crazy friend? Or was it the horror of a man whose darkest secret had just been screamed into a microphone in front of 200 people? I turned my head to look at Jenna. She was still standing there, glass held high, that terrifyingly calm smile plastered on her face. She wasn't laughing. She didn't look like she had made a clumsy mistake with her words. She looked deliberate. She looked triumphant. She took a slow, deliberate sip of her champagne, her eyes meeting mine over the rim of the glass. In that moment, I knew. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a mistake. It was a declaration. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. It was a thick, heavy blanket of shock and disbelief. I could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on me. I saw my mother's face in the crowd, her expression a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. My father was already rising from his seat, his face like thunder. Mark's parents were pale, his mother looking like she was about to faint. The air was thick with unspoken questions. Mark finally broke the spell. He let go of my hand and lunged for the microphone on the small podium next to Jenna. He laughed, a high, nervous sound that echoed unnaturally in the silent room. "Wow," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "Jenna, I think you've had a little too much to drink." He tried to make it sound light, like he was scolding a silly friend. He was trying to give everyone an out, a simple explanation they could all grab onto so the party could continue. But Jenna didn't take the out. She didn't giggle and apologize. She simply lowered her glass and looked at Mark with an unreadable expression. "I haven't had that much to drink, Mark," she said, her voice still perfectly clear, cutting through his forced laughter. She then turned her gaze back to the crowd. I just believe in being honest. That was it. That was the second blow. The first one had been a shock, but this one was a confirmation. She was doubling down. She wanted everyone to know. She wanted me to know. The whispers started then, a low murmur that spread through the room like a virus. People were turning to their neighbors, their faces a mixture of shock and morbid curiosity. The perfect wedding, the perfect day, had just imploded. My own body felt like it was shutting down. I couldn't breathe. My beautiful white dress suddenly felt like a cage. The room started to spin, the warm golden lights blurring into streaks. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears, a frantic, desperate rhythm. This wasn't happening. This had to be a nightmare. I was going to wake up in my bed and it would be the morning of my wedding, and everything would be fine. Mark was still talking into the microphone, his voice getting louder and more frantic. Okay, that's enough from the maid of honor, he said, trying to make another joke. Let's get the music back on. He was sweating now, beads of perspiration on his forehead. He was looking everywhere but at me. He was a cornered animal, and his panic was the most telling thing of all. If Jenna was lying, if she was just being cruel and crazy, he would have been looking at me, his eyes full of apology and concern for me. But he wasn't. He was looking at the crowd, trying to manage the disaster. He was trying to save himself. Jenna just stood there, watching him. She had done her damage. She had planted the bomb and lit the fuse, and now she was just standing back to watch it all burn. My father was at the head table now. He put a hand on Mark's arm, his voice low but firm. Son, I think you should stop talking. My father's face was grim. He looked at me, his eyes full of a pain that mirrored my own. I finally found my voice. It came out as a whisper. Jenna, I said. My throat was so tight it felt like I was choking. She turned to look at me, her expression softening into something that looked horribly like pity. That was worse than the triumphant smile. Why? I whispered. She didn't answer me. One of the other bridesmaids, a girl named Chloe, had rushed up to the stage. She grabbed Jenna's arm. What is wrong with you? Chloe hissed, her voice low and furious. You need to leave, now. She started pulling Jenna away from the podium, away from the microphone, away from the scene of the crime. Jenna didn't resist. She allowed herself to be led away, but not before she cast one last look over her shoulder. It was a look at Mark. A look that was possessive and certain. The room was in chaos. Mark was trying to talk to my father, who was having none of it. Guests were getting up from their tables, not sure if they should stay or go. The whole event had come to a screeching halt, and I was just standing there, frozen in the middle of it all. The beautiful dream had turned into a public humiliation. The two people I loved and trusted more than anyone in the world had just betrayed me in the most spectacular way possible. I couldn't stay there. I couldn't stand under the weight of all those pitying eyes for another second. I turned and walked away. I didn't run. I walked, my back straight, my head held high, even though inside I was crumbling into a million pieces. I walked out of the ballroom, my long train trailing behind me like a chain. I could hear Mark calling my name. Clara, wait! Clara, please. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. If I stopped, I would fall apart completely. I made my way to the bridal suite, my heels clicking on the marble floor of the hotel hallway. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely get the keycard to work. Finally, the little light turned green, and I stumbled into the room, slamming the door shut behind me. I leaned against the door, the silence of the room a stark contrast to the chaos I had just left. I slid down the door until I was sitting on the floor, my expensive dress pooling around me. And then, finally, I let myself break. The tears came, hot and fast. Sobs racked my body, great, gulping breaths of air that did nothing to calm the storm inside me. It was a pain unlike anything I had ever felt. It was a physical ache in my chest, a hollowness that felt like a part of me had been carved out. 15 years. I had been friends with Jenna for 15 years. We had shared everything: secrets, clothes, dreams. She was more like a sister than a friend. And Mark. I had loved him for 5 years. I had planned a future with him. I had just promised to love and cherish him for the rest of my life. How could this have happened? How could I have been so blind? I replayed the toast in my head, over and over. To my best friend and my future husband. The words were like poison, seeping into every happy memory I had of them, tainting everything. All those times the three of us had hung out, laughing and joking. Was it all a lie? Were they laughing at me? All the times Jenna had given me advice about Mark, was she secretly steering me in a direction that would benefit her? All the times Mark had said he was working late, was he with her? The questions swirled in my head, a dizzying, sickening cyclone of doubt and betrayal. A knock on the door jolted me back to the present. "Clara? Honey, it's Mom. Please let me in." My mother's voice was soft, laced with worry. I didn't want to see anyone. I wanted to be left alone in my misery. But I knew she wouldn't go away. I slowly got to my feet, my legs feeling weak and unsteady. I opened the door just a crack. My mother's face was etched with concern. She slipped into the room and closed the door behind her. She didn't say anything. She just pulled me into her arms and held me tight as I started to cry again. I buried my face in her shoulder, my fancy hairstyle coming undone, my makeup smearing all over her dress. She just held me, stroking my hair, murmuring comforting words. "It's okay, sweetie. I'm here. It's going to be okay." But it wasn't okay. Nothing was okay. "How could she do this, Mom?" I sobbed. "How could he?" My mother just held me tighter. "I don't know, honey. I don't know. Some people are just cruel." After a few minutes, another knock came at the door. It was sharper, more insistent. "Clara, let me in. We need to talk." It was Mark. My mother looked at me, her eyes asking a question. Did I want to see him? A part of me wanted to scream at him to go away, to leave me alone forever. But another, stronger part of me needed answers. I needed to hear what lies he was going to tell me. I needed to see his face when he told them. I nodded slowly. My mother squeezed my shoulder, then walked to the door and opened it. Mark rushed in, his face pale and his tie askew. My father was right behind him, his expression grim. "Clara, thank God," Mark said, starting toward me. My father put a hand on his chest, stopping him. "Give her some space, Mark," he said, his voice low and dangerous. Mark ignored him and looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Clara, you have to believe me. Jenna is insane. She's lost her mind." I have no idea why she would say something so horrible. She's always been a little jealous of you, of us. This is some kind of sick, twisted revenge. He was talking fast, the words tumbling out of his mouth. He was trying so hard to sell it. I just stared at him, my tears having stopped. A cold, chilling calm was starting to settle over me. I looked at this man, the man I had promised to spend my life with just a few hours ago, and I felt like I was looking at a stranger. "Jealous?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "She's been my best friend since kindergarten. Why would she be jealous?" "I don't know," he exclaimed, throwing his hands up in the air. "Because you have everything. A great family, a great career, and you had me. Maybe she wanted what you have. I don't know how her mind works, Clara, but I swear to you, there is nothing going on between us. There never has been. I love you. You are my wife." He said the word wife like it was a magic spell, like it would fix everything. But it just made me feel sick. "Don't call me that," I said, my voice barely a whisper. His face fell. "Clara, please," he begged. "Don't let her do this to us. Don't let her win. This is exactly what she wants. She wants to destroy our happiness. My mother spoke up. Mark, if what you're saying is true, then why did Jenna look so confident? Why wasn't she acting like she'd made a drunken mistake? My mom had seen it too. She had seen the triumph in Jenna's eyes. Because she's a psychopath, Mark yelled, his voice cracking. He was getting desperate. I don't know, she needs help. We should be worried about her mental state, not letting her blow up our lives with crazy accusations. I just watched him, my mind racing. He was a good liar. He was very convincing. If I hadn't seen the look on Jenna's face, the absolute certainty in her eyes, I might have even believed him. I might have chalked it up to a moment of madness from a friend who had too much to drink and a history of being dramatic. But I couldn't shake that image. The two of them, the look that passed between them right before she spoke. It was a look of shared understanding, a look of conspiracy. I need you to leave, I said, my voice flat. What? Mark asked, his face a mask of disbelief. Clara, no, I'm not leaving you, not now. I need to be alone, I said, looking at my father. Dad, please. My father nodded. He put a firm hand on Mark's shoulder. You heard her, he said. Let's go. We can sort this out downstairs. There's nothing to sort out, Mark insisted, his voice rising again. She's telling the truth, he said, pointing at me. I'm telling the truth. Jenna is the liar. Then you won't mind giving my daughter some space while she processes the fact that her maid of honor just publicly humiliated her and ruined her wedding day, my father said, his voice leaving no room for argument. He practically steered Mark out of the room. Before the door closed, Mark looked back at me, his eyes full of desperation. I love you, Clara. Please just believe me. The door clicked shut, leaving me alone with my mother again. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the heavy dress making it difficult to move. The adrenaline was starting to wear off, and a deep, crushing exhaustion was taking its place. What do I do? Mom? I asked, looking at my reflection in the large mirror across the room. I saw a girl in a ridiculously expensive white dress, her face blotchy and stained with tears, her eyes empty. I didn't recognize her. For now, you do nothing, my mother said, coming to sit beside me. She started to help me with the tiny buttons on the back of my dress. You're in shock. You don't need to make any decisions right now. We'll get you out of this dress, and then we'll go home. Home? I asked. The word sounded foreign. Home was the apartment I shared with Mark. I couldn't go back there. Not now. Maybe not ever. You'll come home with us, she said, as if reading my mind. You can stay in your old room, just for a little while, until you figure out what you want to do. Her calm, practical words were a lifeline in the swirling chaos of my emotions. One step at a time. First, get out of the dress. She worked patiently at the buttons, her hands gentle. As the dress loosened, I felt like I could finally take a full breath. When it was finally off, I felt a strange sense of relief, as if I had shed a skin that no longer belonged to me. I changed into the simple jeans and t-shirt I had worn to the hotel that morning. They felt more real, more me, than the elaborate costume I had just taken off. My dad came back a few minutes later. He said he had sent Mark home with his parents. He had also told the hotel staff and the wedding planner that there was a family emergency and that the reception was over. He had handled everything. I felt a wave of gratitude for my parents, for their quiet strength. They didn't push me for answers. They didn't tell me what to think or feel. They just created a safe space for me to fall apart. The car ride to my parents' house was silent. I stared out the window at the city lights, the world outside continuing on as if nothing had happened. But my world had stopped. It had tilted on its axis and thrown me off. When we got to their house, I went straight up to my childhood bedroom. It was exactly as I had left it, with its pale yellow walls and the bookshelf full of my favorite books. It felt like a time capsule, a remnant of a simpler, more innocent time. I crawled into bed, pulling the covers up to my chin, And for the first time in hours, the tears stopped. I didn't feel sad anymore. I just felt numb, a vast, empty numbness. And in that numbness, a single cold thought began to form. I needed to know the truth. Not Mark's version of the truth, or Jenna's, the real truth. And I was going to find it. The next morning, I woke up with a headache and a heavy feeling in my chest. The events of the previous night came rushing back, and for a moment, the pain was so sharp it was hard to breathe. But then, the numbness returned, and with it, the resolve. I got out of bed and went downstairs. My parents were in the kitchen, drinking coffee and talking in hushed tones. They stopped when they saw me, their faces full of concern. "How are you feeling, sweetie?" my mom asked. "I'm okay," I lied. I wasn't okay, but I was functioning, and right now that was enough. I poured myself a cup of coffee, my hands steady. "I need to talk to someone," I said. "Not Mark, not yet. One of the other bridesmaids. Sarah." Sarah was my friend from college. She was quiet and observant, not one for drama. She was the opposite of Jenna in many ways. I trusted her to be honest with me. I called her and she picked up on the first ring. "Clara? Oh my God, are you okay? I've been so worried." Her voice was full of genuine concern. "I'm getting there," I said. "Can I ask you something, Sarah? And I need you to be completely honest with me." "Of course," she said. "Anything. Did you ever see anything? Between Mark and Jenna? Anything at all that seemed off?" I held my breath, waiting for her answer. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Sarah?" I prompted gently. I didn't want to say anything. She finally said, her voice hesitant. "I didn't want to cause trouble. I thought I was just imagining it. Or that I was being paranoid." "What?" I pressed. "What did you see?" "It was just little things," she said. The way they would look at each other when they thought no one was watching. Like they had a secret. And they were always texting. During the bachelorette party planning, during the bridal shower. Always. I saw his name pop up on her phone screen a few times. I asked her about it once, casually. She just said they were coordinating a surprise for you for the wedding. A surprise. Jenna's toast was certainly a surprise. "What else?" I asked, my stomach twisting into a knot. "At the rehearsal dinner," Sarah continued, "everyone was mingling, and I went to find the restroom. I took a wrong turn down a hallway, and I saw them. They were at the end of the hall, near an exit. They were talking, very close together. It looked intense. He was holding her arms. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but when he saw me, he dropped his hands like he'd been burned. They both looked so guilty. They tried to laugh it off, said they were having a stupid argument about the seating chart. But it didn't feel like an argument about a seating chart. Every word she said was another nail in the coffin of my marriage. The secret looks, the constant texting, the intense private conversation. Mark's story about Jenna being a crazy, jealous loner was falling apart. This wasn't a one-sided obsession. This was a conspiracy. "Why didn't you tell me, Sarah?" I asked, my voice small. I wasn't angry with her. I was just so tired. "I'm so sorry, Clara," she said, and I could hear the genuine regret in her voice. "I really am. I almost did. A dozen times." "But how do you say that to your friend the week before her wedding? 'Hey, I think your fiancé and your maid of honor are acting weird.' I was scared I was wrong. I was scared of ruining your happiness over a suspicion. I thought, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. I'll never forgive myself for not speaking up." "It's not your fault," I said, and I meant it. "It's theirs. Thank you for telling me, Sarah. You have no idea how much this helps." "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I'm not sure yet," I said, "but I'm not going to let them get away with it." After I hung up with Sarah, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, the coffee growing cold in my mug. Her words confirmed my worst fears. This wasn't a sudden, drunken impulse on Jenna's part. This was something that had been going on for a while. They had been lying to me, deceiving me for who knows how long. The betrayal was deeper and darker than I could have ever imagined. My phone started ringing. It was Mark. I ignored it. It rang again. And again. Then the texts started. "Clara, please talk to me. We can fix this. Don't throw away everything we have because of her. I love you." Each message felt like a slap in the face. He was still trying to manipulate me, still trying to paint himself as the victim. I blocked his number. I didn't want to hear his lies anymore. Then I did something that felt both terrifying and liberating. I opened my laptop and logged into my social media accounts. I knew it would be a bloodbath, but I had to see. My page was flooded with notifications, tags and posts from wedding guests expressing their shock and confusion. Dozens of private messages, some from friends offering support, others from acquaintances fishing for gossip. I ignored all of them. I went to Jenna's page. It was still filled with happy photos from the bachelorette party, the bridal shower, all the pre-wedding events. There were pictures of us, smiling, arms around each other. "So excited for my bestie to get married," she had captioned one of them. Looking at it now made me feel physically ill. It was all a performance. I scrolled through her friends list, my mind working. How could I get more proof? Concrete proof. Something Mark couldn't deny. Something that would show everyone exactly who he and Jenna really were. My eyes landed on a name I recognized. Liam. He was Jenna's ex-boyfriend. They had dated for a couple of years and had a messy breakup about a year ago. I remembered Jenna telling me he was possessive and jealous, but now I wondered if there was more to that story. Maybe he wasn't possessive. Maybe he had seen something too. It was a long shot, but it was all I had. I found his profile and sent him a message. My fingers trembled as I typed. "Hi, Liam. This is Clara, Jenna's friend. I know this is random and we don't really know each other, but I need to ask you something important. It's about Jenna. And Mark." I hit send before I could lose my nerve. Now, all I could do was wait. The waiting was agony. I paced my parents' living room, my mind replaying every interaction, every conversation, every shared laugh with Jenna and Mark, searching for the cracks I had missed. The late-night phone calls Mark would take in the other room, claiming they were for work. The times Jenna would coincidentally show up at a restaurant where Mark and I were having dinner, saying she was in the neighborhood. The expensive bracelet I had seen Jenna wearing a few months ago, which she claimed she had bought for herself with a work bonus. It was identical to one Mark had pointed out to me in a jewelry store window, saying how much he liked it. At the time, I thought it was a coincidence. Now, it felt like a clue. They weren't just betraying me. They were flaunting it, right in front of my face, confident in my blindness. The audacity of it was breathtaking. Hours passed. I checked my phone every few minutes, hoping for a reply from Liam. Nothing. Maybe he wouldn't reply. Why should he? I was a stranger, dragging him into my drama. Just as I was about to give up hope, my phone buzzed. It was a message from him. "Yeah, I remember you. The wedding was yesterday, right? I saw some posts. Looked like it got weird. What about Jenna and Mark?" My heart started to pound. He was willing to talk. I typed back quickly. "It was more than weird. Jenna said something. And I think there's something going on between her and Mark. I know you two had a bad breakup. I was wondering, did you ever suspect anything?" His reply came back almost instantly. "Suspect? I knew, I caught them." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean you caught them?" I wrote. "She told you I was the crazy, jealous one, right?" He replied. "That's what she told everyone. But the truth is, I broke up with her because she was cheating on me." With him? With Mark? The screen blurred in front of my eyes. He knew. He had known all along. "How do you know?" I typed, my hands shaking. I saw the text on her phone. he wrote. Flirting, making plans to meet up, telling each other things they should have been telling us. When I confronted her, she denied it. She said he was just a friend, that he was having problems with you and was confiding in her. She twisted it all around, made me out to be the bad guy. She was so good at it, so convincing that she almost made me believe it myself. But I knew what I saw. He was always around. Your best friend and your loving fiancé. It was a joke. It was all there. The confirmation I needed. It wasn't in my head. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a long, calculated affair. They had been doing this behind my back while I was planning a wedding, while I was writing my vows, while I was dreaming of our future. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. The same question I had asked Sarah. But this time, it felt different. He was an outsider. And say what? He wrote back. Your best friend, the one you adore, is lying to you? Your fiancé, the perfect guy, is a snake? You would have called me a bitter ex. You would have hated me. She had you completely fooled, Clara. Both of you were so deep in her web. I'm sorry, I truly am. No one deserves what they did to you. He was right. I wouldn't have believed him. I would have defended them both fiercely. I would have thought he was just trying to cause trouble. The thought made me feel like a fool. I had been their staunchest defender, their biggest cheerleader, and they had been laughing at me the whole time. A new feeling started to bubble up inside me, pushing past the pain and the shock. It was anger. A cold, hard, clarifying anger. They had humiliated me. They had made a fool out of me in front of everyone I cared about. They thought they could destroy my life and just walk away. They were wrong. Liam, I typed, a plan beginning to form in my mind. Do you still have any of those texts? Any proof at all? There was a pause. Then a message popped up. It was a screenshot. A text from Jenna to Mark, dated 6 months ago. It said, she has no idea. It's almost too easy. Just a few more months of playing along and we can have everything we want. My breath hitched. There it was, in black and white. It wasn't just an affair. It was a plan. They weren't just cheating. They were conning me. Everything we want. What did that mean? My money? My family's connections? The house we were about to buy? I have more, Liam's next message said. A lot more. I saved everything. I guess I always knew that one day her lies would catch up to her. I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. Jenna's past was coming back to haunt her, and I was going to be the ghost. Can you send them to me? I asked. Everything you have. Consider it done, he replied. A few minutes later, my email pinged. The subject line was simple. Proof. I opened it. There were dozens of screenshots. Texts, emails, even a short audio recording of a voicemail Jenna had accidentally left on Liam's phone, where she could be heard in the background, laughing with Mark about how gullible I was. I read through every single message, my anger growing with each word. They talked about me like I was an obstacle, a problem to be managed. They made fun of the wedding plans, the very plans Jenna had pretended to be so excited about helping me with. They talked about the future, their future. How after a decent amount of time, Mark would file for divorce, claiming we had grown apart. He would get half of everything, and they would be free to be together, funded by my life and my work. Jenna's toast wasn't a drunken mistake. It was a power play. Sarah had told me she saw them arguing at the rehearsal dinner. They must have been arguing about their plan. Maybe Mark was getting cold feet. Maybe he was feeling guilty. And Jenna, in a fit of rage or a desperate attempt to force his hand, decided to blow the whole thing up, ensuring that if she couldn't have him the way she planned, then I couldn't have him either. She had set fire to the whole world just to make sure I got burned. I saved everything. I backed it up to a flash drive. I emailed it to myself. I was building an arsenal. They had started a war and I was going to finish it. But not yet. The anger was hot, but my plan needed to be cold. I couldn't just lash out. That's what they would expect. They would expect me to be a hysterical, heartbroken mess. I needed to be calm. I needed to be strategic. My dad came into the living room. "I just got off the phone with Mark's father," he said, his face tight with anger. "He's apologetic. He says Mark is a mess, that he's swearing on his life Jenna is lying." "He's the liar, Dad," I said, my voice steady. "Both of them are." My dad looked at me, surprised by the firmness in my tone. "What did you find out?" he asked. I didn't want to show him the messages yet, not until the time was right. "I just know," I said. "I have a gut feeling, and I'm going to prove it." He nodded, trusting me. "Okay, sweetie. Whatever you need. We're behind you, 100%. Your mother and I have already been making some calls. We've canceled the honeymoon. We're working on getting deposits back from the vendors. The financial side of this, we'll handle it." "Thank you, Dad," I said, feeling a surge of gratitude. "But there's something I need to handle myself." I spent the rest of the day in a strange state of calm. The storm of emotions had passed, leaving behind a quiet, resolute purpose. I ate dinner. I helped my mom with the dishes. I acted, for all intents and purposes, like a person who was coping. But beneath the surface, my mind was whirring, fitting the pieces together, crafting a plan. The next day, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered it. "Clara, it's Carol." It was Mark's mother. Her voice was strained. "I am so sorry about what happened," she said. "I can't imagine what you're going through. My husband and I, we are just mortified. We raised our son better than this." "Better than what?" I asked, my voice neutral. "Better than lying? Or better than getting caught?" There was a silence on the other end. "Mark swears to us that nothing happened," she said, her voice a little weaker. "He says that girl, Jenna, is obsessed with him and that she's trying to ruin his life." "And you believe him?" I asked. "He's my son," she said, as if that explained everything. "I want to believe him. He's devastated, Clara. He loves you so much. He's barely eaten or slept since the wedding." She was trying to make me feel sorry for him. The manipulation ran in the family, it seemed. "I see," I said. "Well, thank you for your call, Carol. But I'm not really in a place to talk about this right now." "Wait," she said, a note of panic in her voice. "Mark wants to see you. He wants to explain. He thinks if he can just talk to you face to face, he can clear this all up. Will you see him? For me? For the sake of the families?" An idea sparked in my mind. This was it. This was the opportunity I needed. "Okay," I said slowly. "I'll see him. But not just him. I want to have a meeting with you and your husband and my parents, and Jenna should be there too." "Jenna?" Carol asked, shocked. "Why on earth would you want her there?" "Because if she's the one who lied, then I want her to say it to all of our faces," I said, my voice hardening. "I want to hear her admit that she made it all up. And if she can't do that, well, then we'll know, won't we?" It was a trap, and she was walking right into it. She thought I was trying to exonerate her son. She thought I wanted a grand apology from Jenna. She had no idea what I was really planning. That makes sense," she said reluctantly. "I'll talk to her parents. I'm sure they'll want to clear their daughter's name. When should we do this?" "Tomorrow evening," I said. "At my parents' house, 7 o'clock. "We'll be there," she said. After I hung up, I took a deep breath. The stage was set. I told my parents about the meeting. "Are you sure you're ready for this, honey?" my mom asked, her eyes full of worry. "I'm sure," I said. "It's time to end this. For good." That night, I didn't sleep much. I went over the plan in my head, again and again. I prepared my evidence. I printed out the screenshots of the text messages and emails. I put the flash drive with the audio file in my pocket. I was ready. I wasn't the heartbroken bride anymore. I was a woman on a mission. They had tried to take my future. Now, I was going to take away theirs. The next evening, my parents' house was filled with a tense, oppressive silence. My mom had set out coffee and some pastries on the dining room table, a gesture of civility that felt absurd under the circumstances. I was sitting in an armchair in the living room, my hands clasped in my lap, feeling strangely calm. My parents sat together on the sofa, a united front. At exactly 7 o'clock, the doorbell rang. My dad opened it. Mark and his parents, Carol and George, walked in. Mark looked awful. His eyes were red-rimmed and bloodshot, and he had dark circles under them. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Good. He saw me and took a step forward, his mouth opening as if to speak. Not yet, Mark, my father said, his voice firm. We're waiting for everyone. Mark stopped, his shoulders slumping. He and his parents took seats on the other sofa, opposite mine. The silence was thick with unspoken accusations. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang again. This time, it was Jenna, with her parents, Susan and Tom, trailing behind her. Jenna looked pale and nervous, a stark contrast to the confident woman who had made that toast 2 days ago. She wouldn't look at me. She kept her eyes fixed on the floor. Her parents, however, looked angry. We're only here because Carol insisted, Tom said, his voice gruff. My daughter made a terrible drunken mistake, and she is profoundly sorry. She has been punished enough. This whole spectacle is unnecessary. I think that's for Clara to decide, my mother said, her voice cool. They all found seats, the room now uncomfortably full. Everyone was looking at me, waiting for me to speak, to cry, to yell. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment longer, watching them all squirm. Finally, I spoke. My voice was quiet, but it carried in the silent room. Thank you all for coming, I began. I know this is difficult. I asked for this meeting because I need to understand what happened. And I need to hear it from the source. I turned my eyes to Jenna. Jenna, I want you to look at me. She flinched, but slowly. She lifted her head. Her eyes were full of a strange mixture of fear and defiance. I want you to tell me why you said what you said at my wedding, I said. Her mother, Susan, jumped in. She's already explained. She had too much champagne. She wasn't thinking. I want to hear it from her, I said, cutting her off, my gaze never leaving Jenna's face. Jenna swallowed hard. It was a mistake, she mumbled, her voice barely audible. I was drunk. I was emotional. I said a stupid, horrible thing. I'm so sorry, Clara. I never meant to hurt you. It was a pathetic, rehearsed apology. So it wasn't true? I asked, my voice still quiet. What you said, about Mark being your future husband, that was a lie? She hesitated for a fraction of a second too long. Mark leaned forward, his eyes boring into her. Tell her, Jenna, he said, his voice tight. Tell her the truth, that you made it all up. He was trying to coach her, to intimidate her into sticking to their story. Yes, Jenna whispered, her eyes dropping back to the floor. It was a lie. I see, I said. I paused, letting her lie settle in the room. Then I turned to Mark. And you, Mark. You're telling me you have no idea why she would say such a thing? That there has never been anything between you two? You can look me in the eye, in front of our parents, and tell me that? Absolutely, he said, his voice full of false sincerity. He looked directly at me, his eyes pleading. Clara, I love you. I have only ever loved you. What Jenna did was cruel and unforgivable, but it has nothing to do with me. I am as much a victim in this as you are. His performance was flawless. His parents were nodding along, looking relieved. Jenna's parents looked vindicated. They were all ready to pin this on the crazy drunken girl and move on. They had underestimated me. A victim, I repeated, my voice flat. That's interesting. I reached into the bag beside my chair and pulled out a stack of papers. I placed them on the coffee table in the center of the room. I have something I'd like you all to see. A wave of confusion washed over the room. Mark's eyes narrowed. Jenna went completely still. I picked up the top sheet of paper. It was a screenshot of the text message from Jenna to Mark. She has no idea. It's almost too easy. Just a few more months of playing along and we can have everything we want. I read it aloud, my voice clear and cold. This was sent 6 months ago. Does this sound like the words of a woman who just made a drunken mistake? A collective gasp went through the room. Carol, Mark's mother, snatched the paper from the table. Her eyes scanned it, her face turning ashen. George leaned over to look, his jaw tightening. Jenna's mother, Susan, just stared, her mouth open. That's taken out of context, Mark stammered, his face losing all its color. We were planning your surprise birthday party. That's what we were talking about. My birthday was 8 months ago, I said calmly. And we didn't have a surprise party. We went to dinner, just the two of us. Try again. I picked up the next sheet. It was an email from Mark to Jenna. In it, he detailed a plan for how he would suggest a post-nuptial agreement that seemed to favor me, but had a loophole that would grant him half of a future inheritance I was expecting from my grandmother. Let's talk about this email, I said, my eyes locking with his. An email where you discuss the best way to secure my grandmother's inheritance after we're married. Is that also about a surprise party? Mark was speechless. He just stared at the paper in my hand, his lies crumbling around him. George, his father, ripped the paper from my hand and read it. A dark red flush crept up his neck. He turned to his son, his eyes blazing with a fury I had never seen before. What is this, Mark? He growled. What in God's name is this? It's not what it looks like, Mark pleaded, his voice high with panic. She's twisting things. Clara is twisting everything. Am I? I asked. I pulled the small flash drive from my pocket. Then maybe you can explain this. I had brought a small, portable speaker. I plugged the flash drive in. A moment later, Jenna's voice filled the room, tinny and distorted from the recording, but unmistakable. She was laughing. She is so gullible, I almost feel bad for her, her recorded voice said. She's running around, picking out flower arrangements, and she has no clue that the whole thing is a sham. Did you see the look on her face when you proposed? Pure, idiotic joy. Mark's voice joined in, his laughter deep and cruel. I know. It's taking all my self-control not to just tell her to hurry up and sign the papers so we can get this over with. But we have to be patient. Just a little longer. It will all be worth it in the end, I promise. The recording ended. The silence that followed was absolute. It was a heavy, suffocating silence, filled with the ugliness of their words. No one was moving. No one was breathing. Jenna had her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Mark was staring at the speaker as if it were a venomous snake. Carol was the first to break. A low, wounded sound escaped her lips. She was looking at her son, her face a mixture of horror and heartbreak. Mark? She whispered. How could you? George stood up. He was a big man, and his shadow fell over his son. His voice was dangerously quiet. You are not my son, he said, each word landing like a blow. My son would not do this. My son is not a thief. He is not a con artist. I don't know who you are. Mark looked up at his father, his eyes wide with terror. Dad, please. Don't you dad me. George roared, his voice finally exploding. You have disgraced our family. You have humiliated us. You have preyed on a wonderful young woman and her family, people who trusted you, who welcomed you into their home. You are nothing. He turned to my parents. I am so sorry, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I am so deeply, profoundly sorry for what my son has done. My father just nodded, his face a grim mask. Susan, Jenna's mother, was now staring at her daughter with a look of pure disgust. All these years, she said, her voice trembling with rage. All these years we have defended you, made excuses for you, told everyone what a good heart you had. And this is who you are? A cruel, jealous, manipulative girl who would destroy her best friend's life for what? For money? For a man who is as rotten as you are? Jenna just kept crying, refusing to look at anyone. I stood up. I had one last thing to say. The wedding is obviously off, I said, my voice ringing with a newfound strength. The gifts will be returned. The vendors will be paid. My father has a list of the expenses we covered for the wedding, Mark. Expenses that you had promised to split with us. We expect a check for your half by the end of the week. Otherwise, our lawyer will be in touch. I looked at George and Carol. I don't blame you for his actions, but he is your son, and this is his debt to pay. George nodded curtly. He will pay it, every last cent, even if I have to sell his car to do it. I then turned to Jenna. As for you, I said, my voice dropping, I have 15 years of memories with you. Sleepovers, secrets, proms, graduations. I thought you were my sister. And you threw it all away. I hope it was worth it, because you have lost everything. You have lost me. You have lost the respect of your parents. And after tonight, you will have lost him too. I looked at Mark, who was now just sitting there, a broken, pathetic figure. Because a man who would do this to me would do it to you too. You two deserve each other. I hope you have a very happy life together, with the ruins of what you've destroyed. And with that, I turned and walked out of the room. I went upstairs to my bedroom and closed the door. I could hear the shouting start downstairs, the recriminations, the accusations, the final messy implosion of all their lives. I didn't need to hear it. I had said my piece. I had laid the truth bare. My part in this was done. A little while later, my house was quiet again. My mom knocked on my door and came in. She sat on the edge of my bed. They're gone, she said. All of them. What happened? I asked. George and Carol practically dragged Mark out of the house. George told him not to come home, that he was on his own. Susan and Tom were devastated. They took Jenna and left without another word. I don't think I've ever seen people look so ashamed. I nodded, feeling a strange sense of emptiness. The anger had burned out, leaving behind a hollow ache. The victory felt quiet. You were so strong, Clara, my mom said, taking my hand. I am so proud of you. You stood up for yourself. You didn't let them walk all over you. I just wanted them to know, I said. I wanted everyone to know the truth. They tried to make me look like a fool. But they're the fools. The days that followed were a blur of logistics and emotional exhaustion. My dad's lawyer sent a letter to Mark, and a check for his half of the wedding expenses arrived a week later, as promised. It was a cashier's check, drawn on his father's bank account. Mark had tried to call me a few times from a blocked number, leaving rambling, pathetic voicemails. I listened to the first one, where he sobbed and begged for a second chance, and then I deleted the rest without listening. It was over. Sarah came over with a bottle of wine and a pizza a few days after the meeting. We sat on my parents' living room floor and talked for hours. The story is everywhere, she said, her voice gentle. Everyone knows what they did. No one is taking their side. Jenna has deleted all of her social media accounts. Chloe told me she tried to reach out to a few people with some crazy story about how you set her up, but nobody bought it. She's a pariah. And Mark? I asked, trying to sound indifferent. His company put him on indefinite leave, Sarah said. Apparently his father is on the board of directors of the parent company, and he made some calls. George is not messing around. He's cut Mark off completely. I heard he's staying on some friend's couch. I felt a small, dark flicker of satisfaction. They had wanted everything. And now they had nothing. They had lost their families, their friends, their reputations, and their financial security. All because of their own greed and cruelty. The process of dismantling the wedding was painful, like picking apart a beautiful tapestry, thread by thread. I sold the dress to a consignment shop. I got a surprising amount for it. I canceled the caterers, the florist, the band. With every call, I felt a little bit lighter, a little more free. The final step was dealing with the apartment I had shared with Mark. My dad went with me. Mark was there, packing his things into cardboard boxes. He looked thin and tired. He didn't look at me. The silence in the apartment was deafening. We moved around each other like ghosts, two people who had once promised each other forever, now reduced to dividing up pots and pans. When he was done, he paused at the door. "Clara," he said, his voice hoarse. "I am sorry." I didn't turn around. "No, you're not," I said. "You're just sorry you got caught." He didn't have a response to that. A moment later, I heard the door close behind him. I was alone. In the home we were supposed to build together. I looked around at the empty spaces where his things used to be. I didn't feel sad. I felt relief. It was a blank slate, a chance to start over. I decided not to keep the apartment. It had too many ghosts. I put my things in storage and stayed with my parents for a few more weeks. I used the money from the canceled wedding and the sale of the dress to put a down payment on a small condo in a different part of the city. It was all mine. No one else's name was on the lease. No one else had a key. The first night I slept there, surrounded by my own things, in my own space, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a very long time. A few months passed. The seasons changed. I focused on my work. I reconnected with old friends. I started to build a new life, one that was entirely my own. I didn't hear anything more about Mark or Jenna, and I didn't ask. They were a part of my past, a closed chapter. One day, I was having lunch with Sarah at a cafe downtown. We were laughing about something silly when she suddenly went quiet, her eyes fixed on something over my shoulder. "Don't look now," she said, her voice low. "But Jenna is here." My heart gave a little jolt, but I kept my composure. "Is she?" I asked, taking a calm sip of my water. "She's working here," Sarah whispered. "She's a waitress." Against my better judgment, I glanced over my shoulder. And there she was. She was wearing a drab black uniform, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked tired and worn down. She was clearing a table, her movements slow and listless. The triumphant, confident woman from my wedding was gone. In her place was this shell. She hadn't seen me. We finished our lunch and paid the bill. As we were walking out, our paths crossed. She looked up and her eyes met mine. For a moment, there was a flicker of recognition, followed by a wave of shame and fear. She looked down quickly, turning away from me, her face burning red. I just kept walking. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The look on her face said it all. She had gotten her future husband, in a way. They were both at the bottom, right where they belonged. As I stepped out into the bright sunshine, I felt nothing for her. Not anger, not pity. Just nothing. They had tried to take my future. They had tried to build their happiness on the ashes of mine. But they had failed. I had my own place, my own life, my own happiness. And them? They were just a bad memory. A story I would one day tell to show how I had survived, how I had fought back, and how I had won. The silence after her toast had been deafening, but the silence in my life where they used to be was peaceful. It was the sound of a new beginning,